So for my part of the session, I'm going to take a look at practice, policy, and research as it relates to allophone students studying, for the most part, French as a second language in Canada. And I just want to say, when I say allophone students, sometimes I might use English language learners, sometimes I might slip back to when I was teaching and use English as a second language, but want you to know that I'm referring specifically to immigrants who have arrived during school age and they have neither French nor English as one of their dominant languages. So no matter the term that I slip back into, now you know where I'm coming from. And because you just came back from lunch, I'm going to try and keep you awake by presenting those areas from two contrasting points of view. So that is looking at second official language learning as opportunity and looking at voices that see it as obstacle. And I'm going to try and use the remote. So first, more optimistically, we're going to start with the view of seeing French second official language learning as opportunity. I'm going to take you first to student voices. These students were participants in my doctoral research, and as you'll see as I scroll through some of their comments on the screen, they're coming from the point of view that learning French at the same time as they're still required to learn English. So these students are in English as a second language classes. They view the learning of French as opportunity. You'll note a pattern of confidence in their comments. In fact, none of the participants, the allophone participants, stated that French was an additional burden for them. They claimed it was easy, and sometimes even linked the ease with which they learned French to opportunities that they were given in class to speak French. These students had kept journals in an 18-week semester. It was an introductory French course, and that's where you have their voices. They made 7 entries. Interesting to note that they were given the opportunity to make the entries in the language of their choice, and they chose to write in English. What you have on the screen now is a subset of their parents, their comments through interviews. So you'll notice again, it's keeping with the theme of second official language learning as opportunity. That the parents voice that they see these opportunities as beneficial to their children. And again, parents were given the option to have the interviews in the language of their choice. They chose to do the interviews in English. Again, speaking to their idea of multi-competencies and not necessarily viewing the necessity to speak English as a native speaker in order to participate speaking in English. Turning to the research, again on the same theme, second official language learning as opportunity. And again, Dagenet and Béron spoke to allophone parents. And those interviews, the parents expressed similar opinions. Why did they register their children in French immersion? Again, because they saw learning French and English as possible for their children. They were confident in their children's abilities and saw second official language learning as opportunities, and voiced that having come from Asia, that was something that they were confident in also and had been part of their own life experience. Secondly was my master's research, where I compared the motivation of allophone students, again at the secondary level, to that of their Canadian peers through a questionnaire, but also through interviews. And again, found the allophone students both qualitatively and quantitatively more motivated than their Canadian-born peers. And they emphasized that the learning of French, while still learning English, they saw it as giving them an opportunity to gain a Canadian identity. And they linked French as being part of that identity that the Canadian-born students didn't necessarily do. They expressed return on the investment of learning French in terms of job opportunities and citizenship. Again, only focusing on Canadian studies here, but now moving on to comparative studies that looked at achievement. Kalman compared listening proficiency of allophone students again to their Canadian-born peers and found that there were no statistical differences, despite the fact that the Canadians had studied French for 3 more years than the allophones. And now in immersion, similar results. Hart, Lapkin, and Swain looking at, I'm only going to focus on middle immersion, although the whole study did early immersion also, looking at French proficiency results at the grade 8 level according to social background factors, and found that students that came from homes that had unofficial L1s outperformed those that came from homes that were English only. Again, following the same theme, once again in French immersion with Bild and Swain, looked at 3 groups this time. So English-speaking homes, students from English-speaking homes, students from homes that had Romance languages used, and students from homes that had non-Romance languages used. And as you might guess, the 2 bilingual groups outperformed those from English-only homes, with the Romance group doing better than those from the non-Romance group. Somebody's going to help me give you a handout that you might have to share. Thank you. I compared allophone students with a French proficiency test, a 4-skill French proficiency test. And the results you're getting on table 1 of the handout. These students were recent immigrants, secondary level. They arrived during their secondary school career. It was in core French. And there were 3 groups. One group, my allophone participants. Second group, Canadian-born English from English-speaking homes. And the last group was Canadian-born from multilingual homes. So second-generation immigrants. The Canadian-born students had studied French from grade 4, whereas the allophone students began the study of French in their secondary school career, so this was their first experience with French. And as you'll see from table 1, there was never an occasion where the allophone students were outperformed by the Canadian-born participants, whether they were multilingual or from English-speaking homes. And then Wendy also compared 2 groups of students, grade 5 this time, allophone students, one group in intensive French, the other group in the regular English stream, and looked at the performance on English results, and found for oral language and again for broad language ability, and found that those students who were in the intensive program performed better than those who were in the mainstream program. So just a bit of a summary as second official language learning as opportunity. We have our allophone participants, our students, seeing it as opportunity, and we have our parents seeing it as opportunity. And in regard to motivation and achievement, we have research that supports that it may provide a positive choice for these students. I'm now going to take you to the opposing view. Where are the voices who see that this may indeed pose an obstacle? I think, there you go. So on the contrary, my same research included a survey of principals and head of student services departments in one school board at the secondary level. And you have their voices on the screen. So at least one person from every school, one administrator from every school responded to the survey. So you see the contrast to the parents, the students, the research, a view of additional language learning as difficult, as an obstacle, as a challenge, as one language perhaps taking from another. Same survey, more information for you. So you'll note none of the schools required the allophone students to study French all the time, despite this taking place in Ontario, where grade 9 at secondary level is supposed to be an obligatory credit. You'll note the majority of the administrators said that they were never required to study French. They cited age as one reason why they weren't included. They also cited lack of English knowledge as another reason for their exclusion. Is that my time? That's my buzzer. A hook. However, though the minority of principals who sometimes allowed these students to be included did recognize that the allophone students met with success in French when they did not meet with success in other areas. So, and despite that fact, despite recognizing that they were successful in French, still chose to not always provide them with the opportunity. So in keeping with the idea of second official language learning as obstacle, I turn to policy, and right now, national policy. So in a country where we have, as of now, 2/3 of our population growth, immigration accounts for 2/3 of that growth. And the vast majority, 90%, coming from countries where French or English is not one of the official languages. And the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages recognizing that such diversity poses a challenge to official linguistic duality of Canada. And as part of a way to address the challenge, want to attract Francophone immigrants to French-speaking areas of Canada. And whereas that is pertinent, it doesn't address a spread of French to areas that are not part of French-speaking communities. So an omission in planning, and consistent with the policies from the past that you have in the screen, on the screen, that allow support for immigrants to learn one official language, but clearly stated that it does not provide opportunities for both. So such an omission comes at a time where Parkin and Turcotte, for example, found that 95% of the allophones surveyed, these were adults, thought it was important for their children to learn a language other than English. So because education is under provincial jurisdiction here, on the back of the handout that you received, and if you didn't receive one, I'd be happy to give you one if you want to send me an email. You just have a survey of some of the provincial policies. I just highlight Quebec for you. So Quebec has their programme d'accueil, after which the immigrants will be mainstreamed, and at that point will be included in the learning of English. Now, Montreal, for example, that is starting English earlier, they weren't able to tell me whether that would make for a change in their policy, but as of now, they will be included, so they will be learning French and English at the same time. worthy of note when you look at two provinces that receive a high percentage of immigrants, British Columbia and Ontario. These are also provinces that have provided for possible exemptions. And at the bottom, you have research that just provides evidence. That research looked at this area, the Ottawa area, and found that within one board of education, there were a variety of experiences, whether the students, allophone students, were included or not. Sometimes they were excluded, always, and at other times they were always included. And where they were included, again, they found that the students performed as well as their allophone, anglophone peers. A bit surprising here, we turn to teacher perspectives, and they fall in the category of as seeing it as an obstacle. So back to Kalman, actually started the research. It was a program evaluation, but chose to look at ESL students because of the teachers voicing that it was a concern, that they were concerned that the allophone students couldn't keep up to their Canadian peers, particularly in writing. And then again, this continues how many years later when we look at Lapkin, McFarlane, and Vandergrift's national survey of teachers. And although not one of the questions, in the open-ended questions, the teachers voiced concern with the diversity in their classroom and highlighting allophone students as a challenge. So from an administrative point of view, rather than looking at as an obstacle, I want to suggest that there are times at which it could be beneficial to many to look at the other side of the coin. It could be beneficial to our allophone students to be included in second official language opportunities. Beneficial to them because their success is not dependent on their knowledge of English for that one course, where we know that they are not meeting with success, that they are being streamed in non-academic areas elsewhere. It also gives them access to teachers who are knowledgeable about second language learning and can hopefully meet some of their needs. If an allophone student arrives at secondary level, it is difficult to provide them opportunities to meet with success. And so at this point, French could be one of those opportunities that could therefore be of benefit to the school community. In terms of government, there are times where linguistic official language duality and cultural diversity are presented as two paths, whereas I think that there would be opportunities, advantages to seeing where they can converge. This would also provide advantages to the allophone communities in that it strengthens human capital, not only for them, but for society in general, and would give them the right to be able to benefit from such opportunities as official language bilingualism brings to them, particularly in certain areas such as Ottawa, or if they're living in Montreal or in New Brunswick, it would be pertinent to their access to jobs, for example. And I'm good.